Hi guys. Right, so a couple of weeks ago I did a post about inner child work and about how important it is to work through the stuff of childhood because of how it impacts us as adults. And I've done a lot of posts and videos since starting the group really about this same topic. But obviously as the group grows and we get new people coming in, sometimes we get members that perhaps haven't seen the older videos or maybe just need a bit of extra clarification on what I mean by inner child work. And Antoinette, you asked me if I would, you were struggling to understand how to put it into practice and how to move away from some of the more detrimental ways of coping. So I thought I'd do a quick video to explain some of the concepts which apply in psychotherapy, so in counselling and that sort of healing aspect of work, but as well they apply spiritually. They're often talked about in both sectors, and they actually have very similar underlying reasons. It's just that, you know, the spirituality minded people describe things one way and the therapists and psychologists describe things another way, but they're actually very similar, and I'm going to show you what I mean. I'm going to share my screen so that I can show you. Okay, share screen, let me see. Okay, let's have a look, see if I've got, yes, I'm sharing my screen with you now. First of all, I wanted to show you the post that I meant. So I'm going to go into the group if it'll let me and show you the post that I'd made a few weeks ago that Antoinette wanted a little bit of clarification on. So bear with me while I find it. Just go down. Okay, where are we? Getting there. Wow, it really was a few weeks ago. I'm sorry it's taken me a while to get back to you, Antoinette. Obviously I have to fit these things in around work and family. Should be coming up to it now. This was it. It was this one. So I'd made a post about there being a child inside all of us that needs the love and the understanding that we keep on looking for outside of ourselves. And it is so common, you know, it's ingrained in us in a way to look outside of ourselves for comfort, for love, and all these things. And we forget that in actual fact, we need to be able to give that to ourselves, because if we're not giving it to ourselves, in all honesty, then we're not offering much for anybody else either, because we can only love another as much as we have loved ourselves. So if you're not loving yourself very well, that will be reflected in some way, shape or form in your other relationships. Okay. In psychology, it's called reparenting. So we go back to when, so as an example, someone may have had a trauma in their late teens or 20s, and it's, you know, massive impact. It's seen them shut themselves away from everybody. They're in therapy, but quite often the things that have triggered it to have such a massive effect can be traced back to childhood. And sometimes you might think those things were insignificant, but when you're a child, you take on things very profoundly that an adult might think, oh well, don't be so silly, get over it, but to that child it's everything. And subconsciously we lock that away. We lock away when someone's brushed us away as a child. We put that in the back of our heads. It might transpire into we can't trust people, or don't let people see your true feelings because they might be rejected, and we don't like that, it hurts. And we then replay it in all our relationships where we're holding back, frightened of being ourselves, hide ourselves away. And it can all be traced back to those original pains, the original traumas. And when we work through that and reparent as an adult, because we've all got an adult inside us now that can be logical. So if we can separate for a little while the child that's in pain, that's been triggered, because of the original hurt. And if we can take away the critical part of ourselves that says, oh, don't be so stupid, get over it, you know, which we've all got that inside ourselves as well. So if we move those away, we're left with our adult self. And this is where grounding can come in as well. If you ground yourself into the adult that you are here and now, and tap into the logic and the intelligence that you have readily available to you to make clear decisions, instead of it being clouded by the hurts of a child or the rantings of your inner critic. Okay, so that's essentially what this post was about. And I know that some of you really struggle with, but I want to feel comfort from somebody else. Well, we all do. It's human nature. We're a pack animals, if you want to look at it in that way. And we naturally do want, we want to be part of something. We like to have a tribe. We want to be understood. And there's nothing wrong with that. And that, again, is available to you if you decide that, you've got to sit down and get to know yourself. You've got to decide, okay, well, shutting myself away, hiding behind these four walls isn't doing me any favours. I don't like it. It's making me miserable. So I'm going to make a list of things that I enjoy doing, and I'm going to go out and do them. And I'm going to be open to making a new friend. I'm going to be friendly. I'm not going to just believe that everyone's got bad intentions because of this shitty thing that happened to me 10 years ago. Because this is what we tend to do. We hold on to the pain of something that happened, and then we project it onto the world and presume that everybody's got bad feelings or everybody's, out to get something from us. And it simply isn't the case. And we're holding ourselves back by not being open to new experiences. Okay. And that's why it's really important to work through your inner baggage, because you will project it out onto other people, new relationships, new jobs, you name it. We colour our lives with it. So it's about deprogramming the faulty messages that we got growing up, because quite often, a lot of us are parents in this group, so we'll all know what it's like when you've got a child tugging at your skirt while you're busy, and you're trying to juggle work, and you're trying to, do 10 things at once, and you've got this little one tugging at you for attention. And it's easy. It's human nature to sometimes feel overloaded and say, not now, but that child may internalize that, if it happens often enough, to feel not important, not heard, not understood, and carry that through to adulthood. So it's not always been because we've had parents that are, terribly abusive and, wanted to give us a bad life. Quite often the messages are just misinterpreted, because children do, they're quite literal, and they do take things on at a very basic level. So, and please don't feel guilty if you have pushed your child away in moments of sheer despair, because all parents do it. And as long as it's very balanced out with lots of love, lots of nurturing, and that child knows that beyond doubt they're loved, it's I'm sure it's fine. It's the adult. When you reach adulthood, it's your responsibility to heal yourself. Okay. So I'm going to show you some ego states now. Hopefully, yes, here we go. Right, so now you should be seeing on your screens what I'm seeing, which is it's some of the theory that's behind the work that I do with clients. Okay, so we've got the parent, and the parent ego state is the behaviours, the thoughts, the feelings that we tend to subconsciously copy from our parents or parent figures, those in charge that were predominantly looking after us as children. We take on the way that they treated us. And quite often, people say, oh my God, I just heard my mother come out of my mouth. I know I do that all the time. I'll say something and it's like that flashback where you hear your mother saying it to you when you were small. And, whether we agree with the messages that our parents imparted on us or not, we do store them subconsciously, and we can repeat those same patterns. So it's important to be aware of what patterns you grew up with, What are the subconscious messages that your parents imparted on you? Then we've got in the centre adult. Adult ego state is the behaviours, the thoughts and the feelings that are a direct response of here and now. Okay, so you'll see how that can, it can sort of merge in with the spirituality side of things there. It's grounding into here and now. What's happening right here, right now? What's the situation so that I can make the best possible decision? That's being an adult. Okay. And then we've got the child ego state at the bottom, which are the behaviours, the thoughts, the feelings that we replay from childhood. Okay, so you can see that if you did experience a lot of trauma in childhood, how that can massively impact on, everything that you do, your thoughts, your beliefs, your worldview, how you go about your day-to-day life. It can massively impact it. So if we can become aware of what these ego states are for us, because mine will be different from yours, okay, and we all have a different, we've all had different experiences, which is why it's important not to tell somebody you're wrong to think that, because you don't know what they grew up with, you don't know what their messages were. And sometimes, yes, it might seem that what somebody is saying is completely left of centre. It doesn't mean that they're not feeling that as true. Okay, we all, our feelings are true to us in the time that we're having them. It doesn't mean that they're best serving us. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't strive to move away from unhelpful emotions. But you're not going to do that just by simply telling somebody to not feel the way that they feel. Okay, it doesn't work that way. Right, so it's important to know these. I want you to spend some time, those of you that struggle with being kind to yourselves, those of you that struggle, perhaps you're really critical of yourselves, perhaps you call yourself stupid in your own head and berate yourself for making a mistake, and I want you to think about where that might come from. Did it come from a teacher that was particularly bullying? Did it come from your parents? Were they really critical? Perhaps they wanted the best for you, but they just went about it in a really sort of harsh and judgmental way, and that stuck with you. Was it your peer group? Perhaps you were, perhaps your circle of friends. Perhaps you felt quite low down in the pecking order, and they were really judgmental and not very nice to be around. What did it come from? That inner critic that you use against yourself, where did it come from? And then can you maybe separate yourself out and think, okay, imagine a child, a flesh and blood, child in front of you. Imagine that child saying the same things that you say to yourself in your head when you make a mistake. Isn't that awful? You wouldn't want to talk to a child that way, would you? And yet you do have that inner child inside yourself that's listening to the way you speak about yourself all the time. Okay? And it all reinforces, all the things that you say about yourself that are negative are being reinforced all the time within these ego states. And what you need to do is acknowledge them. So if a particular feeling is coming from your ego state as a child, acknowledge that, yes, that inner child part of me is frightened right now. It's frightened of being rejected, or maybe it's frightened of making a mistake and looking silly. Acknowledge whatever it is. And then if you can consciously move into the adult, okay, so you're thinking, okay, what's happening here and now is that the vulnerable part of me is feeling this, but I am not that ego state. I am me. I am an adult. I am here. I am now. I am not living in the past. I'm going to move up into my adult state, recognize that I'm not in any immediate danger. The worst that can happen is that I have a go at something new and it doesn't work out. Big deal. We all do that all the time. Be rational. Bring your rational thinking brain into it. We've got to act from a whole place. It's not about ignoring what's happening with the other ego states. It's about just keeping an eye on them and remembering that you are the adult in control. You make the decisions. Okay? So that's one thing that I wanted to show you that may help with your understanding of where I was going with this post. Here's another one for you. Okay, so this is a little bit more complicated diagram, so I'm going to try and explain it to you as best I can. We have a controlling parent, which is the CP. Okay, so we've got a real negative controlling parent inside of us that tells us when we're doing things wrong, or what you're wearing those clothes for, you look ridiculous, or you know, you laughed too loud, everyone's going to stare. You know, that inner critic that's just always on your case. Yes, that's your critical parent. That's what we call it in this type of psychotherapy. And then on the other side at the top, you've got your nurturing parent mode. But notice that both have got the word negative in front of them, meaning these ego states are not helping you. All right. It's obvious in the case of a negative controlling parent that that's not going to help you. That's just going to keep pulling you back and making you unsure of yourself and lose confidence. That doesn't help anybody. The negative nurturing, you might think, well, how's nurturing negative? Well, if it's over nurturing, yes, it is, because it's the, oh, be careful, don't hurt yourself, don't try the big scary thing, because what if you fall and what if you break your neck? You know, it's the side that over wraps in cotton wool, overprotective, smothering, doesn't allow growth. That's not good either. Okay, so recognize, are any of those coming into play for you that are holding you back from living your best life? Think about it. Start being aware of when these ego states pop up, and remember, you're the center one. You are the adult. Bring the logic in. Notice what's happening and decide. You are at choice. You are always at choice. Okay. Underneath, we've got positive controlling parent mode, because let's be honest, sometimes a parent needs to be in control. If there's a wayward child that's about to run out into a road or stick its finger in an electrical socket, we do need to have the sort of positive controlling side, okay? It's about being in balance. Nothing's good when it gets out of control. It's misery for everybody when there's too much of something. Okay, same for the positive nurturing side. You know, someone's hurt, then it's good to give them a bit of nurturing. It's good to give them a bit of TLC, tender loving care. You know, give them hugs and kisses when they're poorly. Help them to feel loved and cherished and understood. That's positive nurturing. There's nothing smothering about that, is there? Do you see the difference? There's a clear difference. So be aware of whether inside your own head, which bit are you going into? Are you in the negative mode, or are you managing to keep it positive? So center, as I've said, adult. So that's your accounting mode. It's your logic, your critical thinking, able to problem solve. If your brain boots you out of the adult, it makes it very difficult to get to the back of the brain that governs logic. You end up a slave to whatever emotional state you've allowed yourself to become. So whether that's, you know, a critical parent state, and you embody that state, and you're now hyper panicked and you can't think straight because you're just so, you know, you're reinforcing the fact that you think you're stupid, all the negative things. Or maybe you've gone down into the child ego state and you're just in a fit of rage or jealousy or upset, and you can't function. The way the brain works is it closes down. You go into flight, fight, or freeze. You can't access logic, which means you've lost touch with your adult self, which means you're not very good at decision making in that state. So it is really important, you know, how many times have we said something we bitterly regret in a fit of rage that had we been in touch with our adult self, we would never have said. You know, it's important to know what these states are and to be aware of your own and your own triggers. So underneath, we've got positive free child mode and positive adapted child mode. So the free child is the child that is running free, it's playing, it's enjoying life, it's happy, it's laughing, creative. This is where your creativity comes from. Those of you that love to make art, those of you that create with your hands, that's free child. We need free child to be able to be creative and have fun. Okay, now we've got positive adapted child, because sometimes things happen that are beyond everybody's control and you need to be able to adapt. Okay, so it's important to have that adaptive nature where, okay, this event's happened, that's all right, I can't be wild crazy fun at the moment, I'm going to have to put my sensible head on to be able to get through the present, whatever it is that's happening. Okay, and you work in unison with adult self to make those decisions. Underneath, we've got negative free child mode, because a child running free with no control, completely let loose, could come into danger. So it's about, again, it's the balance. It's not letting anything run away with itself too much that it could become dangerous. And then we've got negative adapted child mode, which is where a child feels that it's not okay to be themselves. So they will pretend to be something that they are not in order to be accepted. And this particular state here is one that I see all the time in my clients. I see it all the time. They're afraid to be themselves because, for a myriad of reasons, it might be their own parents, it might be a teacher, it might be peers, it can be anything. And that on top of maybe sensitivity, which I talk to my clients about a lot. I'm an HSP, a couple of my clients are HSP, highly sensitive people, empathic, feel everything, and you sort of soak up what's going on around you and feel quite overloaded, and it can make you withdraw. So a lot of the time these children they'll bend themselves and do things that they don't feel comfortable doing just to please the people around them. So perhaps they hate crowds, but they'll tolerate it and they'll swallow down their they won't speak up. They're frightened of being different, frightened of being identified as different, so they pretend and they lose themselves in that. And if that's not dealt with as an adult, it makes for quite a miserable life. So those are the various states that we have going on at any given time in our head. It does help to be aware of them. All right, so we've got some words here. So we've got the nurturing and controlling in a parent. Okay, so in the nurturing side, we've got affectionate, we've got considerate, forgiving, generous, gentle, helpful, kind, praising, sympathetic, tolerant, understanding, unselfish, and warm. All those things are nurturing. That's what a nurturing parent is and what they embody with their child. Okay, so when your critical parent comes in and is giving you a hard time, can you maybe consciously try and tap into that nurturing, and that nurturing's what a parent should be, and apply that to yourself? We can apply all these concepts to ourselves, and we should be, on a daily basis. You don't need to seek outside of yourself. Yes, it's nice to get a hug. Yes, it's nice to be held when you're feeling sad. But sometimes there are periods in life where it's just not there. It doesn't mean you can't change it. You can, but you won't change it from behind four walls. You have to actually engage with life to change anything. Okay? So you're controlling parent in your own head, and you'll be able to envisage this as a parent, perhaps maybe somebody you know, perhaps your own parent, someone you've seen at school, whatever. So they're real bossy, they're demanding, they're dominant, they're fault-finding, they nitpick at everything, very forceful, intolerant, they nag, really overly opinionated. There's nothing wrong with opinions, it's in the delivery of them. They're prejudiced, rigid, severe and stern. Okay, now I bet that we all know people that embody that in their day-to-day life. And do you think they're happy? I don't. I've worked with clients in the past as well that embody this, and it's interesting actually. The clients that I work with, the ones that are struggling with being very critical of themselves, and yet they're very tolerant of everybody else around them. They put up with so much shit. that they need and put up with, because they're the over-adapters. But the ones that have had so much trauma in life that they become and embody the critical parent that lives in their own head, and then they project it out at everybody else. So they're nitpicking and telling everybody off, they're shouting, they're bossy, they're domineering, they're forcing their opinion down your throat whether you want to hear it or not. If you disagree with them, then they would call you stupid, you know, and their lives are very, very, very dysfunctional. You can come away from that, but you've got to want to. Nobody can magic away any of this. You've got to want to make the effort to change. You know, that therapists, spiritual counselors, life coaches, yes, they can show you they can show you the information, they can hold your hand a little bit through the process, they can give you exercises to do, but ultimately, if you're not going to actually put them into practice, nothing is going to change. You have to want it. You have to decide that you're going to, and then go and do it, you know. Excuse me. Okay, just need a drink. So then we move over to the inner child. So we've got free inner child and then adapted inner child. So free inner child is adventurous, affectionate, artistic, energetic, enthusiastic, humorous, imaginative, natural, pleasure-seeking. Your inner child can be sexy. Now remember, this is your inner child as an adult. Okay, it might sound odd, it might even sound triggering depending on what you've been through, for sexy to appear in that list of something that's like about an inner child. But you need to remember that it actually can, if you're not in touch with your free inner child, it can and will affect you in a sexual way. Okay, and I can attest to that. From a personal level, I've spoke to you in here before about some of the things that I went through when I was younger, and I can tell you that if sometimes when you've experienced trauma you disassociate, and I definitely went through a stage of disassociating during intimacy with a partner, because it's just the way the brain works with trauma. It sort of, something triggers a memory, so you disassociate because it's all too much for you to handle. But when you're in touch with your free inner child, it helps you tap into the pleasure part of yourself, the pleasure-seeking part, which does include intimacy and sex. So I just wanted to explain that so that nobody's freaked out by seeing the word sexy in a column talking about your free inner child. I hope you understand that. Okay. So over in the adapted inner child part, we've got anxious, apathetic, arguing, arrogant, awkward, complaining, confused, defensive, dependent, hurried, inhibited, moody, and pouty. Now, it's not to say that we, you know, obviously we can all drift in and out of all of these things. It's about being in your adult, in your center, and choosing what will best serve you here, now, in this given moment, instead of letting your head drift back to a trigger because something's happened that's triggering and it makes you remember 20 years ago when X, Y, or Z happened. And then you know, you're using that triggered place and projecting it out on the people around you. Okay. So it's about being aware, essentially. And I hope that I've managed to explain that. And Antoinette, if you've got any questions, if you want me to explain any of this anymore, please do comment under the video and I'll happily get back to you when I get the time to. But for now, that's it. It's about being aware of what's going on, being aware of what ego state you think you may be in at the moment, and then act accordingly. Tap into the bit that's going to help serve you the most. Be aware if you're being defensive, pushing away friendships, pushing away relationships, because you're frightened of what may happen. And then bit by bit, make a plan to change that. Okay. So yeah, that's all for today. I hope you're having a good start to the week. Any questions, let me know under the video and I'll happily explain, okay? So I'm going to stop sharing the screen now. Okay, have a great day and I'll catch you all later. Bye.